Hello, and welcome to another episode of Pictures Without Pictures. As you can see, I have not set up the thing because I knew there was something I was forgetting. It turns out there were two things I was forgetting, but give me 2 seconds and you will see a lovely, I say lovely, it's a little bit naff, it's a little bit tatty, picture of the Avengers in Wallpaper Engine. It should be doing it. Oh, it's because I haven't swapped to it. Hang on 2 seconds. This is the best podcast you've ever listened to. Hi, this is it. Here it is.
Does it make it worse that I'm eating an apple right now?
Reese is eating an apple right now, but that's fine. I want everyone to be comfortable. Yeah, it's a bit weird. The fire effect on the car to the left annoys me.
That's also the cover. That's what the Iron Man suit is. Cover art for Iron Man 3, I'm pretty sure as well.
Oh yeah, and isn't Thor wearing the wrong armor here as well?
No, I think
I thought he had more of a. I thought maybe he has like a battle variation that I didn't notice or something. But I noticed at one point in Avengers, he's kind of got like a V-neck version of his suit. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get into that in just a moment. Hello, how are you, Reese?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you for asking. Against all odds. This is our podcast episode where we talk about the Avengers, and this is the voice I use.
It's all been leading up to this, my dude.
It's all been leading up to this. This is the one big thing it's all been leading up to. There will be nothing else it ever leads up to ever again. This will be... for those of you who don't already know, we will be doing this film, and then we'll be taking a break from the MCU for a little bit. Not sure how long yet, but not too long. But we basically want to do some other films, stuff I've never seen, stuff we love, that kind of thing. Basically what this podcast was founded on, without just becoming an MCU rewatch podcast. And the end of Phase 1 seems like the perfect place to end it, really. Avengers ending the way that it does, with them all just kind of sat in a shop, just... Did you see the post-credit scene where they all just sat in a cafe looking fucking worn out? And
they went and got shawarma.
Yeah. Oh, is that what that is? Shawarma.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. That was a payoff for that running joke then. Yeah, that's kind of how we're going to feel at the end of this podcast for doing 5 entire Marvel movies in a month and a bit. That's what we've done.
Whilst briefly referencing many others.
Yeah. Reese, do you remember the first time you saw Avengers?
To a degree, yes. I believe... Gosh. I'm trying to remember exactly when it was. It would have been probably first year A-levels or something, wouldn't it?
I think it was before that, actually. I want to say, hang on, let me just look up when it actually came out.
Or it would have been a little bit before that. I'm trying to remember.
It did come out in 2012, actually. So yeah, A-levels...
Yeah, like 8 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know...
I think it was first year, because I specifically remember talking about it with someone, and someone being really disappointed that they said they didn't like it very much because they were really disappointed that Hulk wasn't really Hulk for much of it. And I was like, I mean, that's kind of like...
I actually think Hulk is the best part of this movie. That's my take. That's my brave take.
It's not that brave, I'll be honest.
I was surprised because I've never been a huge Hulk fan, and I don't remember rating him originally when I first saw this movie. But watching it yesterday, I was like, Hulk's really fucking good. It's probably because he's the only superpowered character per se that we... Well, I guess he did get his own movie, but not the Hulk that we know, if you know what I mean. Not really. Yeah, we don't talk about the Hulk movie, but also Bruce Banner's just a super interesting character and stuff. Although I do have one small gripe.
Sure. He's like the one guy that... He's literally the one guy that impresses Tony. It's something that I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
For those two characters.
Yeah.
Is that Tony's very much like I'm the best, blah blah blah, and then he gets put in a room with him, and he's like, oh my god, it's you! Like he just starts fanboying a little bit. You know?
Finally, someone who speaks English. Cool. Is that what that was? that little scene was cool.
It was a good scene.
I actually think this movie is the best, or maybe I already said that the best thing about it is the Hulk, so I can't say it's the best thing about it. But one of the best things about it is the dialogue. There are so many good interactions between characters, and the conversations are also quick.
For sure.
Yes. So they actually managed to get a lot of stuff in.
Pack a punch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like there were only a few fan servicey moments. It was actually a lot because it was done so quickly in between the action scenes. So I think that was actually something to... A criticism I do have of the film, though, is it looks bland. There's like no visual direction at all.
I think that's definitely something that comes later, though. Is
Yeah.
like they were kind of just acing the whole thing. Like, this is the most flashy thing is probably, you know,
That's my check.
Iron Man and Captain America. Like, that's kind of it. Even like Thor and Loki are like from another world almost. They look probably not even as interesting, and obviously everything's very black and it's agenty, you know.
Yeah.
Which I think is which is why I think they for the later ones why they tried to pull away from them unless it was specific films that made sense for it, like obviously Captain America films, and stuff like that.
Yeah. They all look so new as well. So new and unscarred and like.
For sure, yeah.
It's weird. They're all like babies. Chris Hemsworth, for some reason, looks like a teenage version of himself in a lot of the scenes in this film.
It does, doesn't it?
It's really weird. I don't like it. And it's weird because he's got stubble as well. I don't remember if he had like stubble in 4, but he has.
I think he
stubble in
did
this
to a
film.
degree.
It just makes him look even younger, which is the opposite effect that you want stubble to have. I think it was his suit, to be honest. His suit was the issue. It was just a V-neck. Why did you give Thor a V-neck? It was weird. I don't remember if he had it in the action scenes, but in the scenes where he was on the helicarrier and just talking to everyone, I was like, what is he? What is he doing? He doesn't look like a god.
Yeah, it was a bit odd, like some of the stuff he was wearing, but it was interesting. Like, they definitely, one of the things that you typically are concerned about when you've got all these lead up films that have spent so long with like a specific character or characters. One of the things you worry about is you lose a lot of that the moment that they all come together in the same room.
Absolutely.
But something that was done very well was they still had their own little moments by themselves, and then the interactions with each other expanded upon the characters that were already established.
Yeah, that was done brilliantly because I guess I'm unfairly or not unfairly, I'm going to throw this into a comparison with a movie that came out half a decade later with Justice League. Justice League, and we'll probably do it at some point. And I don't actually remember a lot about Justice League, but I remember coming away kind of disappointed with that film because I think it didn't
for sure.
give the characters the breathing room they needed, and part of that was that like Flash and Aquaman and Cyborg and other characters, they didn't have their own movie to flesh them out yet. But then Hawkeye and Black Widow didn't have their own movies, and they still felt like, and the Hulk, if this version of the Hulk,
they
still
felt established characters.
Yeah, like you gave them a decent amount of breathing room to like exist, and Nick Fury as well.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Although we saw some of each character in other movies, but they were, especially Hawkeye, extremely minimal in some ways.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For sure.
So the first note I wrote down is we open on a tease of the Infinity Saga's true threat, but do we? It's so like obfuscated. I'm not even sure we see the main villain of Guardians of the Galaxy, his name eludes me.
I know you're on about,
yeah. I thought
like
we got
Ronin or something like that.
Ronin, that's it. I thought we got him. I thought he was in Avengers, but he's not even a post-credit scene in this. For some reason, I remembered him being in Avengers.
Because his more thing is Guardians, isn't it? Which is after.
Yeah.
So, because he fucks around for a bit, but I mean, obviously that's given reason to why he doesn't fuck with Earth specifically, because obviously Captain Marvel later on, obviously, earlier on technically, but obviously in that film that comes out later on. Oops, sorry, I kicked my desk. With that film that comes out later on, obviously she very much like threatens him and is like, yeah, Earth's off limits, goodbye. Which I think is why he never like was a part of that.
Yeah.
And was probably off doing his other things.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff. I think it's weird coming back to this movie having seen the entire Infinity Saga. I think that's what they're calling it, isn't it? The first.
That's the thing as well. Like one of the good things about it as well, though, is the callbacks that they did in the later films.
I know. Oh, I had it.
So on point. So on point.
I realised, actually, this isn't a callback in later films. This is a callback in this film. I realised that Tony Stark saying "I don't like being handed things" is a thing that he says. Like he said that in Iron Man 2. I'm assuming he probably said that.
He said it in Iron Man 1 as well.
Yeah.
He literally says it in every Iron Man. It's literally like the first thing he says is "I don't like being handed things."
And then Pepper's like, "It's fine, I do." But yeah, it was. they definitely the opening of this movie. They definitely wanted to give the impression of there was a much bigger threat, like that was leading into this. Like this isn't everything we've been leading up to. It is to a point, but it's also we've got way more to do after this. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, like it's one of the things as well is Loki. Loki obviously is very clearly like answering to a higher power.
Yeah.
Like even if that higher power is not yet established at all.
Also, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but Tom Hiddleston seemed bored
I think,
at least in the first half of this movie. But I think that might be Loki in that until he got to the point where he was able to actually do shit on Earth. And
do Loki shit, yeah.
He was just like, oh, I have to put up with being this guy's lapdog kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, he's one of the. He does. He. I mean, he says it himself. I was a king.
Yeah.
Like he sees himself so far above everyone else that he makes a point, and so if he has to answer to someone, it's like fucking. I'm beyond this, you know.
Still makes me
this
wonder.
This is very much beneath me.
Still makes me wonder what the Loki TV show is even going to look like. What?
I think it's supposed.
How do you do that?
Isn't it supposed to be based around like him having the Tesseract and just fucking about, basically?
I mean, I'm down. I just don't know how you make that a sustainable narrative across many
I mean,
episodes.
bearing in mind, this is the Loki right at the end of Avengers, which is who's still like very much like I hate my brother and probably all of these guys now, and want to do something to get vengeance back. So it could literally just be a case of he just ends up fucking about, you know,
Maybe
coming back, fucking shit up.
Because it's a TV show, I imagine it won't actually feature many of the movie characters because
probably not.
Salaries
It'll have like probably
and
some Shield
effects
people and
stuff,
stuff, you know.
Yeah,
They may
it'll
throw in
probably have
like
its
one
subcast.
gear in there, or they'll mention them, you know, like.
For my
But I
bits
mean,
and
he's
cameos,
also.
but-
I think the whole like interaction with the Hulk though definitely scars him to some degree. So I honestly think like he probably will stay away from Earth because he realized obviously they're not as lowly as he thought. So he
Yeah.
probably just goes off and maybe it's just a case of him finding his place to rule. Like I think that's probably the most accurate way of thinking of it.
Yeah. Oh man, as I was watching this, though, I was thinking ahead to other films and like the fact that we see all these characters come together here for the first time, but then we see them more familiar with each other in later settings and storylines and stuff. It really made me appreciate the success that is the MCU and how they built it out and how it feels like fucking comic books. And how did they do it?
Really well, yeah.
They made movies feel like comic books. At least in the scope of like in the Avengers, you know, obviously it's very Earth centric. It's very like this is a big thing that's happening on Earth. But later on, it's like we can have these characters interact with different worlds and different plot lines, and it's fun. Basically, it's stuff like I was watching. There was a scene where Thor and the Hulk were fighting side by side. I was just thinking ahead to Thor Ragnarok and like how cool it is.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it into words, but it's just cool.
I think I know what you're saying. Yeah.
It's just cool. I like how much they overused the soundtrack. They were like, "Oh, we've actually got a good soundtrack on our hands for once, so let's fucking overuse the shit out of it." And
Yeah.
I'm glad they did.
Yeah. I mean, the first instances of like the Avengers theme is like it kind of plays the intro of it a little bit, in when obviously they're first going in to like the underground like sort of base thing.
You just,
And then the moment he says like, "Oh, it's a level 7," and then you can hear the actual like full theme creeping in, and like and then it obviously title screen, and then it pops off, you know.
Yeah. I'm gonna get us taken off Spotify for copyright infringement.
Oh my
because
god,
of my
dude,
fantastic retelling of the or redoing of.
It's alright. It's cover. It's fine. Fair use.
Oh yeah. That was a phrase I had written down. Doors open from both sides. For some reason that stuck in my head. Do they use that again, or is that just something they used in promo material for the Endgame stuff when they were doing kind of flashback audio snippets?
Wait, what? Doors open?
When they're in the base and the Tesseract is starting to open a portal, and I believe it's a scientist dude who says doors open from both sides. Something about the way he said it. No?
That wasn't him that said that.
That wasn't him. I have a really bad memory for remembering who said what.
It was Hawkeye who said it.
Hawkeye, that's the one. Yeah, he says doors open from both sides. Does he say that again in Infinity War or Endgame or something? I don't know why that's stuck in my brain, but it is. Maybe I'll Google it.
I don't know.
Maybe I'll do some quick Google foo live on the show.
I don't know. That doesn't seem like something that would
Oh,
naturally
I know
fit.
why. It's a song from it's one of the soundtrack songs from Alan Silvestri. That's why it's stuck in my brain because it's probably in a playlist I've got somewhere. Ignore
Oh
me.
yeah, for sure.
Ignore me.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, I like it. I do like it when they name particular soundtracks after the lines that they're associated with. It's easier to recognise them.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah. Sorry, carry on.
No, go ahead.
I didn't have much to say. It's fine. Go on.
Okay. I was going to say, continuing on in the underground scene, didn't we get a tease at the end of 4 where Loki was masquerading as a scientist dude? Because he looks.
I imagine he had some sort of not really, because he like looked over to the mirror and then it wasn't like his reflection was Loki. It was like Loki sort of walked in and was like, that sounds pretty good, and then he just sort of turns and goes, yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Oh, okay. I might be
like,
misremembering something I already saw.
I think it's just influenced. I imagine like it's weird to work out how exactly that worked, because the idea is obviously Loki is in some weird place.
Yeah.
Maybe this is like a little bit of time after the fact, and they've found a way, obviously, because they know how to use the Tesseract to make a portal and then get through, which is odd.
There's a lot of things which I think don't tie in too perfectly, but you just kind of have to accept that nothing's ever going to be perfect on a scale as big as this, and it's the kind of thing most people don't even think about. I think I just nitpick too much when I do these notes. I look for things to talk about, and because of that, I notice things.
It's weird, like trying to work out how exactly like it worked out like that. Like even if you didn't do that, it still would have been fine. Like you ignore that end credit scene, and it's still fine.
Yeah.
Like if Loki's not there, and he's like, "Oh, that's interesting" or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. And maybe they took a different direction with the plot after they'd already filmed that, and then they just forgot about it.
That's probably the case. But honestly, that end credit scene isn't necessary in any capacity. Like you can literally remove that, and it works a lot better. Honestly,
it does. It actually works better.
It raises too many questions to be worth it.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe they'll go full on what's his face, George Lucas, and like make a whole film to try and fill in the gap. It'll be like the time travel version of Endgame.
God, Jesus Christ.
Did you notice in that scene though, Loki's eyes were really dirty? They were like yellowed and hollowed.
So I honestly think like it's either a case of like I have a couple theories for that. It basically seems like obviously he is very hollowed out or whatever because he's had to deal with probably some very horrible people. I mean, you kind of attest to that when he has that sort of conversation through that vision, like partway through the movie.
Yeah.
It honestly seems like he's sort of drained and he's like almost like been worked to the bone almost. It's like he comes through and he looks stupid tired, but he's just like, and he's so like not Loki as well. Like he doesn't like he looks like ridiculously like evil. Like he's basically walked through him and I'm the bad guy, and then obviously done his thing.
Yeah, because I was thinking as well, the fight he puts up against the Shield agents. Obviously he wipes the floor with them, but not as quickly as I'd expect. So maybe he was just like completely fucking out of juice.
Yeah, I honestly think like obviously if he was because obviously if he was dealing with Thanos, like obviously that much we do know at this point.
Yeah.
Obviously not so much aware of that from this film, but obviously he is dealing with Thanos, and Thanos is like, by all extended purposes, a crazy person, the Mad Titan they call him and all that. So I guess the idea was he basically broke him down and was like, "You're gonna go do this for me now, and if not, well, I will kill you."
Yeah. I mean, I guess if someone threatened me like that, I'd probably look a little bit weary as well.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, you're so confident in your power of what you are, and then once there's a bigger fish than you, it's suddenly like, oh shit, like, you know.
Exactly. Moving on a bit, I liked how they had introductions for each character. Like, it's probably why this movie is quite long, but They were like, this is important. We need to establish
Yeah,
each character in the Avengers.
Yeah, the setup I think does take a lot of bulk off this movie.
Yeah.
You remove that and it's like we're good to go. But even then though, there's still important stuff intermingled in that. Like why Captain America is important and why he understands what's going on and obviously he understands obviously it's important to go do this. Obviously Tony Stark's whole thing and that obviously he ends up being kind of central to a lot of it because of obviously his tower and stuff. And then I think the introductions for both Black Widow and Bruce Banner are important just because these are characters we don't really know that well.
Yeah.
So they're very, and then you've got Thor. He literally drops in and he's there, like he's just there, which I think is kind of a statement to his character as well. But like it must be a case of like he's a lot easier to like be like, oh yeah, this is Thor. Yeah. Like he's a very much simpler character than the others.
If we just will quickly go through them though, I loved Black Widow's entrance, like the switcheroo. I hope we get to see more of that kind of thing in her own movie when she gets that soon.
I mean, her movie stuff will probably be a lot of spy stuff, I imagine, which would be interesting to see.
I can't say I'm hugely hyped for her movie, but it is the first Marvel movie we're getting in a fair bit.
I believe Iron Man is supposed to be in it as well to some capacity. Huh. Yeah, I've heard he's supposed to be in it to some capacity.
So Robert Downey Jr. is like, that's it, no more Iron Man. Iron Man died. I'm done doing Iron Man. And they're like, hey, we're doing this prequel movie. He's like, oh, go on, man.
Was he like on his way out though, like Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth were? Obviously, Chris Evans was be done with the role. He was like, I'm done after this. Like,
no, because Chris Hemsworth stayed on. I assume the two people who left.
Yeah, he stayed on because it changed, and he was like, actually, I'm enjoying this again.
I know,
but like with Robert Downey Jr., was it a case of him being like, okay, I'm done with this role now?
I don't even know.
Or was it a case of obviously the character is done, but I'm happy to come back and do like prior stuff that would be included, obviously with that stuff.
Robert Downey Jr. done with Marvel. Looks. There's a small chance we'll actually see Robert Downey Jr. in another Marvel movie. That's the title of his headline, and I'm going to be that annoying person who doesn't read the entire article because we're doing a podcast. But yeah, I guess I don't know the specifics, but I'm sure somebody does who's listening to this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, the Bruce Banner entrance, I literally didn't remember. I had apparently just purged that from my brain for some reason, but I thought it was a really cool scene. The way he tests her, that was really mean. I bet he's like, I'm sorry, that was really mean. I think I like Captain America's entrance. That was very on character, but I haven't really got a lot to say about it. Same with Iron Man, but I honestly think Thor's entrance is so fucking badass. The way he just fucking lands on the, I want to call it a pelican.
He just drops in, smacks them both to the ground with one, and then just yoinks Loki. Like it's like, see ya.
Yeah.
But I think his like character development moment is alongside Loki though. In that, like after that, and they had that conversation on the sort of like mountainous bit, and they're just obviously chatting about it. Which there's a good joke in that part as well, which I fucking love as well.
I'm listening.
I'm listening.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fan favorites. Oh, I love it so much. This movie had a lot of good, like, funny moments, but they don't sit on any of them for too long. If you notice, like, I think modern Marvel movies, which is fun to say, I recommend saying that, is they're very. There's so much more comedy packed into them, or maybe I'm just thinking this because I've seen Thor Ragnarok too many times. But
I honestly think it might be a case of like they got to a point where they realized that they could make it work, and people enjoyed that, so they tried to incorporate it
funnier
more.
And wackier. Yeah,
because I feel like the jokes they made in this were safe.
Yeah,
like, they were safe jokes. And obviously this was the first time that they'd done anything like this, so they were like, okay, we'll make some jokes, but we'll keep it. We won't go crazy. If they like it, maybe we'll add a few more in the next time. You know, I mean, if you literally fast forward to Age of Ultron, his entire character makes jokes all the time, and it works to a degree. It does kind of draw some stuff out of certain situations, but
I think it compromises his villainy a bit. But yeah.
Well, I think the idea, he's like this sort of weird amalgamation thing, but we'll get into that when we do that film. But and then obviously from there onwards, it's like I think they hit a nice middle ground with it all. Like obviously Thor Ragnarok, I think is just a very, you know, it hits the jokes very well,
One of the best
and
films ever
they're very
made.
good. They're very punchy, for sure. They're very good, very punchy, and yeah, and there's a level of subtlety to it all as well, where it's not like the characters are still like in the moment, whereas like someone's just said something. It's like almost like a turn to the camera from like, or Deadpool turns to the camera or something. It's like, haha, joke. You know.
I wonder if a Deadpool movie actually had anything to do with like the change in tone of, okay, people fucking love that. We should bring some more of that into our like mainline MCU movies. And also, I was thinking Guardians of the Galaxy feels like a bit of a step in that direction as well.
Yeah, I think both Guardians. I think Guardians was the first.
Yeah.
Like that's that made them lean towards it, and then Thor Ragnarok basically like cemented it for sure. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy was, I believe it was like such an ambitious thing. Like they thought it was going to be this crazy ambitious thing, and it ended up being really good. Arguably one of my favorites. It's almost like a mini Avengers film.
It's one of my favorite sci-fi even stories, to be honest. I remember when it was announced and people were going, "Really? You're doing that part of the comics?"
No one knew what it was. No one knew what it was as well. The people that did know were like, "Huh," but then everyone that didn't know was like, "Why should I care?" Like,
yeah, it's like, you're doing Rocket Raccoon. You're really doing that MCU Rocket Raccoon, and now it's like, well, yes, we love Rocket Raccoon.
That's one of the. But one of the beautiful things about doing that, though, is it's completely separate from everything. You can literally pick that movie out and watch it and not miss anything from anything else.
I had a lot of fun playing around in my head with the idea that Daredevil takes place in the same universe as Guardians of the Galaxy. I know you haven't seen Daredevil, but it's like the Avengers is to Daredevil what Guardians of the Galaxy is to Avengers on like terms of scale, if you know what I mean. Like Daredevil takes place in a borough of New York. I think that's the right term. Borough. It takes place in Hell's Kitchen. It's not even like a whole full-scale New York thing.
Yeah, I think I know that much about Daredevil. I watched the old the old Ben Affleck film.
Yeah, I've never seen the Ben Affleck one.
Back in the day.
But I can.
It's alright. It's not that bad, but it has Kingpin in it.
I really
hope it has Kingpin and Bullseye, I believe.
Yeah. I really hope they make new deals for like Disney Plus. Like, I need more Daredevil and Jessica Jones in my life. God damn it! Just give me that.
We do. I mean, it would be awesome to see. It would be awesome to see if they did incorporate. Like, I think the best way they could incorporate Daredevil is with Spider-Man.
There was a rumor that they were going to incorporate him into a film. I don't remember which one though.
I heard that. And I think honestly the best way they could do it is with Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is a very much beloved character. You add a more edgier version in. I think it could work quite well because they're both very similar in like what they do as well. They're very acrobatic.
They share.
So I think it would work.
And Kingpin.
Yeah, and Kingpin is also similar villain.
If you're gonna put Kingpin, like Daredevil's Kingpin, into the like actual movie side of the MCU, that he would his actor, I forget the actor's name, but he does it so fucking well. He would be right at home, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
And don't give me that minor side villain shit. He deserves his own movie. He's so good.
I mean, he technically did have his own movie in Multiverse. So
yeah.
Just Wide Boy. I fucking love his design.
But I mean, like
Multiverse.
this version of. I just mean this version of Kingpin,
sure.
played by this guy, who I think is on some detective show that keeps playing in my workplace. I keep seeing him and going, "Wait, isn't that Kingpin?" And he's like a good guy in that. I'm like, this is weird. Anyway, weird tangent. Moving on.
We've gone way away from Avengers. Jesus Christ.
That's fine. No, that's fine.
It's fine. It works.
I'm gonna try and be less strict about nipping conversations like that in the bud. I think
we bring it back anyway. Like the conversation actually comes to an end, and then we just bring it back. So it's all good.
Like I could say, I mean, as a sequitur, I could say, yeah, Kingpin. That version of Kingpin's great. Everything about the Daredevil Netflix series is great, especially the action scenes. The action scenes in Avengers, however, there you go. I put down didn't age very well, but that was the first half of the movie.
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing. Some of the earlier ones are just hit, guy goes down, stands up. Hit, guy goes down, stands up. Like, it's so boring. And I was like, all right.
I think it's because they saved all their budget and rehearsal stuff for the second half of the movie, which is
I mean,
very well
there
done.
was so much shit going on at the end. A lot of it practical as well, which was very cool to see. I always like practical effects and like practical explosions and stuff like that. It's always good to see.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention when you mentioned Thor's entrance and the scene with him and Loki in the forest. At one point, he says to Loki, "Do I look to be in a gaming mood?" And that's a phrase I'm going to start throwing your way. Except I never will because I'm always in a gaming mood. But if I'm ever not in a gaming mood, I'll store that in my memory banks, like I'm a fucking computer, I guess.
That's similar to a line that I want to say from now on after watching The Witcher, which is, "Are you perhaps short of a marble?" Where I think Jaskier says to Geralt, which I fucking love. Are you perhaps short of a marble?
I like it when The Witcher says fuck. Anyway.
I like it when The Witcher says fuck too.
Fuck.
Fuck.
That was a good series. I really liked the Thor versus Iron Man versus Captain America scene, which is weird because, do you know what? I remember the first time I saw this movie thinking they spent too much time fighting each other, which was frustrating because it took away from the main conflict. And now I'm like, no, that was cool. If anything, there wasn't enough of it. It actually ended quite quickly.
When Cap like jumped in and joined the fight, his shield bounced weird, and I think this is probably the first.
Oh yeah, you were talking about
it. It like bounced off both of them and just went straight back to him. And I was like, come on, come on,
vibranium, dude.
Don't give me that shit. I mean, it makes sense in the later ones because he has like a specific thing that like it attaches to his arm, doesn't it? So it makes sense then.
Yeah,
but
I definitely notice small details like that. You're like the small details guy.
You're the small details guy.
Am I? Oh.
Yeah, you just literally said earlier about you were nitpicking at small things.
Oh yeah, true. I'm also the 5 seconds of empty silence on a podcast guy. Anyway, moving on. I've already mentioned that, and I've already mentioned that. Did you notice... Okay, so I guess I'm jumping ahead a bit because I didn't make too many notes between. When they transport Loki to the helicarrier, they put him in that prison. First of all, bad idea. Second of all, I do like how Nick Fury eventually cottoned on to that and said, like, why do I get the impression that Loki is the only person who wants to be on this helicarrier? Or ship, or whatever he fucking calls it. But when Black Widow goes in there, and she goes in there to extract information out of him, that's a really fucking cool scene. I think most of her scenes are actually some of the best scenes in the movie, because she
does very well.
She plays it in a way that there's enough truth in it that it's like, even I was fooled. I was like, oh really? I don't remember this. I didn't realise they went with the whole she actually gets really intimidated by him. That's kind of disappointing. And this is like the third time I've seen this film, and then obviously she turns around and she's like, you know, oh, so thanks for telling me shit.
I think that's really interesting as well, because I guess the idea is that where they're from, you know, there's one woman warrior that they know of.
Oh yeah.
So he's like, oh, it's a woman, come to talk to me. He even says to her like, oh, you're the one to be my friend, like, to become friends with me, because she's a woman.
Yeah.
Which I think is very smart and very well done. So he plays into that and is like, wow, you're a woman, go cry in a corner. Oh wow, I've accidentally let slip my plan. Oops. Like,
I was also taking note of how Captain America viewed her, because he comes from an age where, I mean, Peggy Carter was awesome, but she was also an outlier. So they didn't do a huge amount with that, but I thought it was important to his kind of like relationship.
I imagine that stuff's more important later on in his films. I know obviously their relation. I haven't watched Winter Soldier, but I know their relationship is obviously a lot more gone through in that one. Like, it's a lot more expanded and sort of worked on, which will be interesting to see when I do watch that one.
Yeah. But I was going to say about that scene, when Loki is like trying to be intimidating and stuff, it was kind of clever how, and there weren't a huge amount of clever shots in this film, but it was kind of clever how we were viewing her through the glass and then Loki's reflection was superimposed on top of her to look more intimidating.
And it was like really big as well. It was wide Loki.
Yeah, it was quite Disney, wasn't it? Of like how he was like towering over her like that.
Yeah. It was very good.
But then obviously she did the switch.
Very good.
She's like, she shouldn't be called Black Widow. She should be called the Switcheroo. because
The switcheroo, yeah.
I think it is intentional that her interrogation mirrors her opening scene where she was like, "Oh, hang on a minute, I'm in the middle of an interrogation. This guy's about to tell me everything." Like that's foreshadowing. So, that was
Yeah.
Also,
Sure.
Loki's outburst I put was kind of not PG.
There's a lot of stuff in here that's not PG,
I
which
know.
I'll mention after you're done with your point.
But that's good. We shouldn't like make everything super PG. It would be boring if it was. But
Yes.
yeah, it just kind of took me by surprise. I was like, oh damn. But then I remembered this is also a series which kills literally half of the entire population of the universe and then spends a movie dealing with the grief of the characters who survived. So
Yep.
I guess I should be surprised when Avengers gets a little bit dark.
For sure. But yeah, like there's other points like where it's like when he's working out like, oh, when it's Tony with Bruce and he's like, oh, how do you like work it out? What's your secret? Smooth jazz, big bag of weed. It's like, all right, wasn't expecting that.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It's like it's such a throwaway line, but it's like that's not something you say in a Disney movie.
Well, to be fair, this was pre-Disney, right? Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
was.
this is probably why it's a little bit more edgy.
Side note, I was looking at Disney Plus earlier, and they have this section called Disney Through the Decades. I was like, sure, and I clicked on it, and they have Star Wars movies and Marvel stuff, and I'm like, does that count as Disney Through the Decades? You weren't Disney back then. They weren't Disney.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was a bit weird.
weird, that.
But then you could also say the Pixar stuff wasn't Disney, but I'm not old enough to remember that acquisition, so it just sounds like Disney to me anyway. But anyway,
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a weird semantics thing, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think one of my favourite scenes in this movie is when they all start arguing about
Yes.
S.H.I.E.L.D.'s use of the Tesseract technology to make weapons, and how that entire scene plays out, and how Bruce Banner picks up the scepter, but you don't know until he knows, and it shows how
That's what I was looking for as well. Yeah, I was looking for it because I saw you can if you're paying attention to it, you can see the moment he turns and picks it up, and then you see like Nick's like eye go down, and he's like hand on gun, like
that's cool.
It's very well
hand
done.
on his gun. That was fairly like obvious that bit, but yeah, I didn't know.
But like he's looking at him, and then you see him like his eye darts down, and then that's when it shows them like reaching for their guns, and they're like, put it down. He's like, oh,
when did I pick this up? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very cleverly done, and just like it's very believable that every character in that room is getting angry with each other, and it was cool to see Captain America get riled up and be less than a goody two shoes as well. Like put the
let's
suit
take
on.
then outside kind of guy.
And even then, he's still like, I'm not going to beat you up until you've got the suit on. He's like, put the suit on, put the suit on, put the suit. And then shit gets. I was gonna say shit gets all wacky. Yeah, let's go for that. Shit gets all wacky, and then he's like, put the suit on. And he's like, yeah, okay, good idea. I liked that a lot. But that whole argument scene was really well done.
For sure. Yeah. I just like Thor and all of that as well, because he's like so like different towards them. He's like, oh, you guys are so petty.
Yeah. You just reminded me of another point that I want to make later, but they did make the Hulk legitimately scary in this film.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I think it's important that he gets paired up with Black Widow when everything goes awry, because she's the character that's been painted as unshakable, and then she's shaken. And that's not and that's not because damsel in distress character, because she's the opposite of that, and that's why it's effective.
It's been established she's the opposite of that. Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. Also, I can kind of understand why they went for more of a I thought it came out of nowhere originally, but in the later films, when they go for a romance between those two characters, I can kind of see the beginnings of it here.
Yeah, like it makes sense to me, like based on this film specifically, like the lead on from there, it makes sense.
My thing is, because I don't watch a lot of movies, I also don't rewatch the movies that I do see. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm just now connecting as I watch these movies within a shorter time range, and that's one of them where I'm like, oh, that did make sense. I just didn't remember it.
I think one of the great things about when the Hulk like appears for the first time as well is everything's shot from her perspective, So it's like, oh, and then obviously when it does the switch camera angle, it's like the camera's down on her, and then it's swapped around, it's up at him, and it's done very well to like make him even more intimidating than he already would be. Obviously him running around and breaking shit as well.
God, yeah, he's fucking terrifying. And we don't see a lot of that later on because we get a tame Hulk quite quickly in the MCU. And I think they do play around with the idea a couple times of what if he lost control as the Hulk again, but nothing too concrete. Maybe we'll get Planet Hulk one day. I mean, Thor Ragnarok was kind of a little bit Planet Hulkish from what I understand of that storyline, but there's a whole thing with the X-Men, isn't there, with him and Wolverine, where he basically fucks up the entire Earth and makes like an army of Hulks or something? I don't even know.
Yes. I believe that is the comic book stuff for Old Man Logan.
That's the one.
I think Reese spoke to me about that. But it's a world that's ruled by Hulk, basically.
Yeah. And he's got like loads of kids and who are all Hulk babies. Yeah. I wonder if we'll ever get there. I mean, that's probably going to be a what if series thing, right? Like, they're not going to do that to the MCU.
If they do that as a what if, I mean, that sounds like something. That sounds like a very dark thing to do. So I doubt it. But
I don't know. I mean,
the fact that they were gonna do a fucking horror film.
Yeah.
They were gonna do a fucking horror film, and they were like, actually no. And I was like, well, I am not interested in this new Doctor Strange film anymore, then.
Yeah.
Like, because it's gonna be the illusion of a horror film, but it's not gonna be scary at all.
Horror film elements, and it's like, well, that doesn't work for horror though, because the whole point of horror is you're fully immersed in the horror of it. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's suspense and building up to that. It doesn't work if it has horror elements. That's jump scares. Jump scares are scary.
We've got a name. We've already got a genre for horror film elements. It's called thriller. That's what those are. Anyway, Coulson free crying faces. That's my next note. Poor Coulson. That being said, I have heard that Tahiti is a wonderful place, so hopefully he gets better. But
I'm sure he will.
I like how they also. It was such an important character moment for Nick Fury that he faked the vintage cards getting bloodied, so that he could rally the Avengers. That's such like a ends justify the means thing, which is his character in a nutshell.
For sure. I mean, that's pretty much this whole thing, the entire film. When he's talking to the council and stuff as well, he's pretty much like, yes, they'll get it done. Yes, shit's going sideways, but it will be done.
Yeah.
Like,
but also
they're more the extreme version of that as well, where obviously they end up sending the nuke.
Coulson tells him to do it. He says he doesn't specifically tell him to do that, but he says, like, they need something to rally behind as he's dying.
Yeah.
So he kind of
gives like, why did you do it? And he's like, well, they need something, yeah.
Yeah. But I also think it's an important moment later on in the film when Nick Fury's doing everything he can to stop the nuke, which we'll talk about later, getting to Manhattan.
Yeah.
Because it shows his ends justify the means to a point.
Yes.
He's not about to nuke Manhattan. But we'll get to that later. I have issues with the whole helicarrier situation when it's going down, because I'm not sure if you caught this. So they lose an engine, and that's when Iron Man and Cap go and try and fix that. And Maria Hill says, if we lose one more engine, we're going to crash. And then Hawkeye does his cool thing where he EMPs, or he fucking shoots hacker arrows.
He shoots a hacker arrow into a
I take it back, that's not cool, that's fucking stupid. But yeah, and then he turns off all the engines.
No, he turns off one.
Oh, okay, that was my issue.
Turns off one. It only shows one that turns off, yeah.
Okay. I
and then
it starts off falling. All the engines, and then they got one engine back online, they were like, hey, we're good. I was like, wait.
No, he only deactivates one.
Okay, good. I was gonna say.
Because if you notice, like, only, like, certain parts of the consoles get fucked with, so...
Okay.
He hasn't got technology like Tony Stark has, where he can probably hack the entire fucking system.
This is what I mean by you're a small details guy. You notice these things, and I just... No?
I'm just observant. I'm just very observant. Like, I pick apart stuff. Like, I've said this before, I'm a firm believer in things are there for a reason.
Yeah. I think
obviously,
I'm like
as long
that
as you're paying attention, you won't know why.
I'm like that when I read books, but sadly... I mean, maybe it's just an experience thing. Like I said, I haven't watched a lot of movies. So maybe
I mean, you'll get it, honestly. Like, you watch enough movies, you'll understand. Like, it is almost like a skill you can train. It's just being observant, like being that enthralled, especially being that enthralled in a movie and being that interested in a movie. You'll find you are just watching it, and then you'll pick up things as you go.
True.
Like just watching because you want it, because you don't want to miss the details because you're so interested in what's going on screen, which is pure immersion, which is fantastic.
Yeah, true, very true. Hawkeye tries too hard. That's a note I put down. He's okay in later movies as well, but I think in this one he overacts, where he's always whipping out the bow, and he's like,
oh yeah, he does it one too many times, doesn't he?
Does.
Like the first time was fine because he was being dramatic and stuff, and I was like, all right, fair enough, he's having his bit, you know. But he does it again, and I'm like, no,
yeah,
stop it. We're not here for you.
Did we need to waste 3 seconds on that again for a second time? Maybe it's because he only had such a small presence in the 4 movie. He was like, right, I've got to do something.
This is my thing now. Kids will be doing this up and down.
But yeah, they did this kind of arguably cliched thing where they showed like, oh, it's a dark moment in the film. Here's all the heroes are losing their resolve and everything's going bad. And then Phil Coulson's death rallies them, and now here's all of them picking themselves up, and they're like, right, I'm gonna act, and all this kind of stuff. And 4 is a funny one to observe during this time, because they do this thing of, you see 4 looking sad, and then all of this other stuff happens with Phil Coulson, and there are so many cuts and shots of different heroes that you kind of forget by the time that you get back to 4 that nothing really happens between him looking at his hammer on the ground, looking dejectedly at his hand, no, and then looking at his hammer and going, wait a minute, and lifting it up and going, I'm a god of thunder. His rallying cry is that he can still pick up the hammer. Because I think because it's still
different.
worthy.
I think you're taking it very literally.
Right.
How I observe that is that he sees himself as failing again. And I think the idea of him being in that moment and then still picking up the hammer is harkening back to what Odin said from obviously his film. I think the idea is that obviously he lost, and that kind of old Thor of, you know, the old arrogant and like wanting, like, I should win all the time, blah blah blah, but he lost. He was tricked and he lost again. And I think he's just having that moment of being like, do I even deserve to pick this up right now?
I guess. Yeah.
And then obviously there is a lot of cuts and stuff in between, which kind of does muddy that a little bit. But I think the intention there is like, he goes, no. And then he kind of remembers what Odin said about, like, obviously he knows he's worthy deep down. I mean, or else he wouldn't have done the stuff he'd already done. So then he goes and picks it up, and then obviously has that moment.
I was going to say, I think maybe him picking it up was him going, okay, still worthy. Okay, we good.
Yeah, like it was just. I think it was a case of like, that was that weird, like, because he is like, in terms of obviously his people, he is still quite young as well, or is considered to be still quite young.
Isn't he like 1,000 years old?
Yes, but like that's why let's say, like, from his perspective, from his people's perspective. So he has that like almost like moment of being like self-doubt, I guess, where he's like, do I deserve to pick this up? But then obviously he's like, oh, of course I do, yeah. But it's not like an arrogant, of course I do. It's like a, I know I can.
Yeah, I guess. I was kind of oversimplifying it a bit for comedy, but you've got a point.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I honestly think having it done differently would have worked better, because I think there was too much happening in between for it to work properly for what I think was the intended way for it to work.
That might be one of the only points. That might be one of the only cracks shown in the whole. You can't. It's hard to focus on so many different main characters in a film like this. That might be one of the only times that a crack is shown.
Yes, for sure. Like,
actually,
it's hard to. Okay,
but it moves on, so carry on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, it's the only point because they're also separated, but they're in so different places as well. And I think because they're so separated, it feels like what they're doing is separated. Even though, like, obviously he's come across the thing and be like, oh yeah, he's blah blah blah, not alive, but I think it's done strangely, and I think there probably was a better way of doing it, cutting between them so like, aggressively like that, because it was like it was supposed to be the suiting up part of the movie, I think, which was obviously everyone's getting their shit and stuff. I think that's what it was supposed to be. Wasn't a very good suiting up scene though.
I think it's just a trope in a lot of movies of, if you've got a wide cast of characters and they're all having a rallying moment, there's usually at least one which is in like a different location, and it doesn't necessarily make a huge amount of sense for them to have that same rallying moment, but for the flow of a movie it needs to be that way.
It does feel somewhat removed.
It's the
Though,
kind
I
of thing
will
my
agree
brain
there.
likes to pick out and laugh and like toy with. But I was gonna say the only other issue I have, and I mentioned earlier, I had one issue with the Hulk, and that's that I think he didn't necessarily get enough time to transition between. Actually, I have a specific note. We literally went from "Did I hurt anyone?" to "I'm always angry," based only on "You tried to steer your landing as you fell," and he can't fly. Like, how can you tell that he's trying to steer his land as he fell? And I get the whole idea is that he realizes that, wait, so you're saying that I tried to make a decision to benefit other people as the Hulk?
Yeah.
So there's still some of my goodness in the Hulk. So wait, that means I can control a Hulk and I can use these powers for good. I just think it wasn't necessarily given enough time, and I know this is a very time constricted movie because of it's so long already, but it wasn't given enough time to really flesh out. And so unfortunately the way it kind of looks like for the Hulk is we see him going, oh shit, we can't let him be the Hulk, he can't control himself, he's a loose cannon, all this kind of stuff, to all of a sudden we're good. And it's not a huge flaw in the movie. It's a movie without a lot of flaws, though, so I am going to be picking apart the flaws that there are.
I do agree with that, because there was nothing from that moment until he appears in New York.
Yeah.
Like,
I do like
literally
that Tony
nothing there.
knows that he's going to come to this realization, no? Like, Tony already knows it when he's talking to him. I think there's a quote where he's basically saying something along the lines of, like, oh, and when are you going to suit up? And he's like, no, I'm not bringing the Hulk. And he's like, okay, well, we'll see, kind of thing. He knows. But
But that's the thing, like, that's what I love. Everyone else sees it as him poking the bear, when really he's encouraging the bear. There's that moment where they're on the screens and stuff, and he says about it, and he's like, I can't remember specifically what he says, but like he has like a proper like moment with him in the lab, where they're like it's through the screen because he's like doing stuff, and then like moves it out the way, and he's like, no, I'm talking to you.
Yeah,
and it has that very real sort of human moment. Which I think is which are rare for Tony, and it's nice to see like when he does have those moments, because he does know obviously when it is necessary to be that.
I just like, I look at comic books and I see the Hulk, and I've never been like, ooh, good Hulk story. But MCU.
Sorry,
Hulk,
I just remembered the point I was going to make about that. Sorry. That's the first time, because that's what I meant about callbacks as well, because Tony specifically says, because obviously says that's you absorbed enough radiation to kill you, but you didn't. So you must be still alive for some reason. Or some purpose, which then is called back to in Endgame when he says, "This is what I'm built for."
Yeah, I guess.
Which I think was brilliant. The fact that that line came from Tony is really good.
Yeah, very true. This is such a good, like, I think the fact that Kevin Feige has been behind, as far as I know, every MCU movie really shows. Because he's like, obviously every director has their amount of say as a director, and different people write different screenplays, but he's there going, okay, that's good, we just need to make sure we hit this moment or include this character interaction as a callback on that would be a really good payoff for that. I'm gesticulating wildly, none of you can see me, but just appreciate the fact that my hands are waving around right now.
Just assume whenever I'm talking passionately, I'm also gesticulating. So,
oh yeah, dude, I fucking love gesticulating, it's the best thing. But yeah, I think that is good. My short-term memory is bad because I can't even remember the sentence I was just saying. So here's a non sequitur. That shot where Iron Man is flying towards Stark Tower and his jets are failing. I've said before how I love how imperfectly he's portrayed. I think that was another one of those moments, obviously because he's been damaged from being in the helicarrier blade, but like that was a cool moment. Like, they could have just gone with, okay, no, he needs to look determined right now because he realises that Loki's sat in his tower. But they were like, no, this is still Tony Stark. He's still got to be a little bit stapled together, if you know what I mean. Also, it was just kind of funny. It was kind of funny.
So,
and again, it reinforces the fact that he is a mortal man in a metal suit, which the final act of this film does brilliantly. Robert Downey Jr. deserves much praise for his acting. Because this is such a huge part of his character from this point onwards as well. His actions at the end of this movie. Should we get into the end of the movie? What did you think about the end of the movie, Reese? the final act where they're all in New York.
Was good because it's good because I like how it sets up stuff he does in Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
But I think it's very interesting in that it harkens back to Iron Man, all the way back to Iron Man 1 with I mean, something that's very good in this film is he says specifically, well, Captain America says to him, "You're the kind of man who would never make the play to lay down on the wire while the other man crawls over you." And he's like, "No, I just cut the wire." He says shit like that, but he has such a strong sense of sacrificing himself for good. Like going back, like it's almost like responsibility, which ends up being like, which responsibility for him is almost like sacrificing himself because of the effort he puts in. You know, there is no this, there is no that, there is the next mission, and that's it.
He butts heads with Captain America early on in this movie so much, I think, because Captain America, like, he's like, no, we're not soldiers. Like, his whole thing is he doesn't do weapons anymore, or he does, but in the name of like defense and stuff, and not selling it to places. And I think he looks at Captain America and he sees someone who is a weapon, who was made to be a weapon to be used in a war. And he's got this modern thinking of like, that's so bad. But Captain America still hasn't been in the modern age for that long. He doesn't realise. I think Nick Fury says something to him along the lines of America's slipped up a lot lately. Paraphrasing, obviously. He doesn't realise that, so he doesn't realise the big deal behind S.H.I.E.L.D. manufacturing these big weapons and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's a big source of conflict between him and Iron Man early in the movie. And he doesn't respect Iron Man because he doesn't see him as someone, like you said, who's going to sacrifice himself. I think it's such a important part of their relationship moving forwards that at the end of this movie, he basically does sacrifice himself. Like, you can see their respect growing for each other as they see each other fight, and like they see each other's heroism.
That's one of the great things about this movie as well, is because it's interesting, like there's clear like opposing ideas and stuff, but which causes a lot of conflict. But I mean, the people that have the same ideas, you know, they still fight, and it's the idea that even though they are very much like similar in some regards, they still like conflict on certain things because they're thinking about the same thing in two different ways to a degree. Like it's the whole reason Civil War happens. Yeah, it's because of, it's not so much because of the people they are, it's because of their experiences. Reason why Iron Man goes and is like, yes, we should be regulated, because of obviously he feels responsible and he needs to be kept under control so he doesn't have to keep fucking shit up as he thinks he is. So all he sees is the aftermath. He doesn't see the good that's being done. You know, it's one of those things of like focusing on the negative thing when such a good thing's been happened, but focusing so much on the negative, like it's one of those things like it's an old adage that I heard back along. I could say something nice to you and you'll forget it pretty quickly. I'll say something bad and you'll remember it for the rest of your life. Yeah,
true. I think we'll touch on this more when we actually do Civil War for sure, but it is...
For sure. I don't want to go too much into it. I just thought it's important, I
just want to say the groundwork for it really is laid here, in that you see that Tony Stark obviously sees what happens when weapons aren't regulated, and he agrees in Civil War that they need to be regulated and all this stuff. But Captain America comes from very much from a place where he's seen what happens when a country like oppresses people, and it's just such a perfect conflict because they're both right in their own way.
Because exactly.
Unlike the conflicts
we have purely from their experiences as well. It's purely from their experiences, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think this movie really lays down a lot of that, and it's so good. I don't think I appreciated Civil War for what it was when I originally saw it, because like I said, I hadn't watched these movies back to back. I hadn't painted such a good picture of without pictures of what these characters are and where they come from and why they are the way they are, and I'm just enjoying these movies a lot more for it.
Yeah,
it's so good and so interesting, and I love it.
It is, yeah, for sure. But yeah, going back to what we were saying about the final thing, I think it's very interesting, and the like the almost acceptance from Tony Stark as well, as he's like, this is me done. Like, you know, it's like, I'm in space, huh? Yeah. And he just kind of accepts what's happening.
Yeah, it's like an Endgame.
Because at that point, he is just a man in a suit, because everything's like, he's just a man in
I don't
an
think
hour
he
into
built that
it,
suit to
so-
be in space, so like you can see
Sure.
he immediately starts dying as soon as he's in space.
Yeah. Everything turns off as well, and he's just a bit of metal in space.
Yeah, which I think is important for his future designs. Like in Infinity
for
War,
sure.
he just fucking exits the atmosphere like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be
Fucking
fair,
nanomachines, son. They harden.
Yeah.
I was gonna make a joke. Never mind. They harden under extreme pressure or whatever it is, or extreme trauma. Sorry, that's the word. That's a reference to Metal Gear Rising: Revenge.
Oh right.
Nanomachines, son.
I have played half an hour of that game.
It's a good game.
It is a game. I was gonna say, so the cool thing about watching movies. Okay, so this is getting into like Death of the Author territory. The cool thing about watching movies that were made like 10 years ago is that they can say things, and this is true of any story, they can say things about the current day that couldn't have been foreseen. And we'll get into that a lot more with Infinity War, holy shit, and Endgame. It has narratives that like are important now, but like weren't even thought about as much back then. And I want to bring your attention to the police captain and Captain America's interaction with him, where he lays out a very well thought out plan. He's like, what you need to do is put your men here, here, and here. You know, I'll keep communications with you. And the police captain says, "Why the hell should I take orders from you?" And it's endearing. And I just think with all of this stuff about police and their power and their, I don't want to get too political on this podcast, obviously, but the police and their power and their sense of pride, and he basically endangers lives by not immediately just being like, I mean, sure, you shouldn't just immediately accept orders from some random guy, but given the situation,
good plan.
Yeah,
like
he should see the plan for what it is, and like kind of I don't want to get into a whole political thing, but I think it's just kind of interesting that that's painted as an endearing thing when, if you're looking at it through a realistic lens, which this movie isn't really supposed to be anyway, but he kind of endangers people by not realizing the plan for what it was because he's too prideful about his own sense of like, I'm the captain here kind of thing. I just thought that was really cool. That was something that I picked up on in 2020, but I would not have done in 2012. You know.
Yeah.
But I might be trying to make a point where there isn't one. But it's just something that stood out to me. That kind of anything with police in it at the minute stands out to me fairly obviously because of the world we live in right now. But,
it's interesting to see how they've been portrayed or are being portrayed. Based on obviously current climate and stuff. So it's really good to see.
Yeah. Moving on though. I already talked about Hulk. The Shield Council wanting to nuke Manhattan.
Yeah. What is that?
Well, I can't. Well, basically, we'll be able to talk more about this in the future. But I'm surprised I forgot this happened, and I think
I know that someone sent a nuke. I just can't remember where exactly it came from.
I didn't remember the nuke at all, and I think it's crazy that Nick Fury didn't turn around and start questioning the Shield Council after that. You know, but I guess it's because he is also a man of ends meet the. Or means, I forget. I'm losing my mind here. But, like, I just thought that was really
the ends justify the means.
Yeah, and that's something I'll be bringing up again when we do Winter Soldier. I won't go into it too much now because I don't want to spoil shit, but...
and I imagine Winter Soldier goes a lot more into S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff, so it makes sense.
The main thing...
that's more to do with Cap and stuff.
The main thing I want to talk about is just how it never comes up again. Like, even in Winter Soldier. Like...
Well, I feel like... almost like Nick Fury's almost like cutting himself off from that in a way. Like, he almost, like, goes rogue at that point, but also he still has all the stuff... I mean, fucking Age of Ultron, he just turns up, and he's just a dude, like...
Yeah.
Which is quite funny. But, like, I honestly think, like, he just goes and does his own thing. Like, we don't see any more of that. I honestly think it's just a case of...
You'll see the A to B with Winter Soldier for that, but yeah.
Oh, for sure. But... yeah, like, it just seems like he's almost been like, well, you guys just tried to nuke a place, so no. Like,
it's interesting because I think it's kind of a different approach between Marvel and DC is shown here, in that Marvel is definitely all about the heroes, whereas DC, you got the whole Batman versus Superman thing because of how does Superman exist in a real world and be Superman, and what happens when people start blaming him. And I think if DC made this movie, they would then make another movie about, like, hang on, let's just talk about this. The government just tried to nuke Manhattan. What does that do to the world? Because people saw it, people saw Tony Stark take the missile through the portal. How does Tony Stark react to that? What's the world like when a superhero questions what a government does and all this kind of stuff? I think the fact that they don't go into that at all, that's something that DC would do and Marvel wouldn't do. I'm not saying Marvel should do either. I just think it's interesting to note the differences between the two there.
I mean, I think the whole thing with DC is it's more grounded. It tries to ground itself more heavily in reality and like how things would function in a society or in with a certain government about and things like that.
Yeah.
With
DC's movies.
With Marvel, it feels almost like plot points. Like it's just this government is doing this, and that's the plot point for this movie. Like, you know, which I think is really interesting and. That's the thing as well. Like, I don't think DC is by any way worse than Marvel in terms of like the content they could put out. I just think they're just doing it. No. I don't think the stuff. Sorry. I'll say it again. I don't think the material they have to work with is necessarily worse.
There you go.
But I think the execution of trying to make it into a grander thing is very bad.
Yeah.
Because
I could talk for hours about that.
I don't think to make it good, they don't have to do what Marvel does. They don't have to make this incredible, uplifting thing, you know, the heroes are downtrodden and then they rise up and do the good thing, you know. Like, that's kind of not what you want from DC, especially with characters, obviously, like Batman and so on, and Superman. Because they had a good setup, I think. Like, with Man of Steel was a good film. Man of Steel was a great film. I haven't watched Wonder Woman, but I want to. And I'll watch
Wonder Woman's great. I really enjoyed Wonder Woman.
The sense I get is a lot more of a gritty tale of like a superhero existing in a world that is like, well, you may be super, but you're also, you know, it's the law and shit.
Yeah.
And again, it comes down to like the development of characters and stuff. Like and one of the reasons again with Ultron why people don't care about certain characters from Ultron. In that, like, there's the characters that you know, which have all of the screen time in Justice League, and the characters you don't know have no screen time. And it's like, right, but then I'm not going to care about the characters even more.
Yeah.
And I'm only going to root for the ones I like, but then that removes half the movie.
Well, absolutely do DC movies after we finish with, like, Phase 3 of Marvel and stuff, but...
Yeah,
I'm so looking forward to doing those because I think it's in a way more interesting to discuss movies that went wrong than movies that went right. And Avengers is very much
and trying to understand like where they went wrong and how they could have done better.
Yeah, because like this, we've been mostly pointing out things which we really liked. We've been making. I won't say making mountains out of molehills, but like for instance, when I've detected like a flaw, I've kind of gone in depth on it. When really, I watched it, I just kind of went, I wasn't going, oh, that's kind of lame or anything like that. Whereas Justice League, I remember coming out of that movie and just being like, Batman looked weird. He had these weird goggles on. That's about all I remember of the film at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was just, it was like we need to set up big set piece at the end. Yeah. That's what that film felt like. This film, it expanded on its characters, had many conflicts between said characters, and then eventually coming together for the set piece at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think it's almost like
just like everyone's angry at each other.
I'm not saying this is the case, but it feels like Marvel, the MCU, is mostly produced by someone who loves comics, and DC is mostly produced. I don't even know if it's all produced by the same guy, but it feels like it's mostly produced by a board of executives who are trying to tick boxes of like, what do fans want? How can we get this into the same level of like fame as the MCU? Because I guarantee you, if the MCU wasn't a thing, we wouldn't have any kind of connected universe for DC. They wouldn't have tried to do that.
And that's what's annoying, is like no ideas original kind of stuff. It's like, but allowing creative freedom with these kind of things is or should be encouraged, and it's not encouraged enough because of, well, very simply, money. It's so no one wants to spend millions of dollars or pounds or whatever currency on something that is trying to do something different, because different is they don't have exactly different they haven't researched, because different is entirely new and they can't research that because it's new,
and that's why there's so many sequels.
It's a risk.
And Like, even in the games
Exactly.
industry nowadays, there are so many remasters and remakes, and I
Exactly,
notoriously
because
quite
they know
apologetic
these
of them,
things
but-
can sell. All they have
Yeah.
to do is slap a fresh coat of paint on
Yeah.
it and sell it the same game effectively.
Yeah.
I mean, to some people's credit, Capcom have done a fantastic job with stuff like Resident Evil 2, where they remade the game effectively.
Yeah, there's definitely remakes like that. But there's
But,
also
like-
remakes like just remasters like, I can't think of one off the top of my head now, but you know the ones I mean, where it's like,
Yes.
I can tell you one.
It's just
Assassin's
it's just
Creed
upscaled
Ezio
res,
Collection.
like it's just
Yeah.
upscaled.
The
Like
Assassin's
that's
Creed
all it
Ezio
is.
Collection, when Assassin's Creed 2, they patched it, I think, but when Assassin's Creed 2 as the Ezio Collection remaster came out, it actually, the characters looked worse than the original. They had this weird clay face
Oh,
thing
no.
going on. I don't know what's wrong with Ubisoft and faces. Someone needs to talk to them, but
Yeah,
it was
someone needs to. Yeah.
it was a thing. And we're getting on a massive tangent here, but like it's easy to see how there is a balance you have to make between creative types and business types. I'm very much a creative type, but I'll admit you can't have one without the other. Too many creative types makes, if we're staying on the gaming allegory, too many gaming types makes Star Citizen, or more appropriately doesn't make Star Citizen, because that is a game that quite famously isn't like produced or not. What's the equivalent for that? Isn't I guess doesn't have a publisher telling them to stop, draw a line, and publish a game. And millions and millions of pounds have been sunk into it, and there's no. They recently came out with a roadmap towards the next roadmap.
Oh no!
Here's the steps we're gonna take. This week we're gonna start drawing out the kind of things we want to put into a roadmap. The week after that, like, it was literally, I'm not even joking. It was literally like a parody of game development.
Jesus Christ!
Well,
like that's the thing. Like with stuff like that as well, there is a level of structure that does come with the business as well. Like, okay, we need it done like by this time. We need this done, this done, this done, which is fair enough. But I mean, if anything's a testament to creative freedom, is multiverse. You know, Spider-Man. Was it Into the Multiverse?
Into the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse. That was it. Sorry, I forgot that they just put the spider in there. But yeah, Into the Spider-Verse. So that is the most ambitiously creative thing that has come out of anything in film in the last 10 years or so. Like, obviously, I'd say like obviously the Avengers stuff probably is the stuff that was the most obviously creative when it came out. Because the idea of building up a world outside of the comics, or based on the comics, outside of it to do its own thing. Spider-Verse took so many creative liberties. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, I was following one of the guys on Twitter who did was going through a lot of the concept stuff and how they did certain things, and the shit they used was insane. Like, I'd never heard any like animation people talk about the stuff they were using, like the techniques they were using. They pioneered so many new techniques from it, which I think Sony ended up patenting so that obviously people wouldn't just fucking steal them. But like, it was insane the stuff they did, and they also made an interesting storyline, interesting characters, like.
Yep. But
while also being a crazy, interesting animated thing that felt like a comic book, like you were watching a comic book come to life. Fantastic.
But here's where the business side of that comes in. At the end of the day, it's still an adaptation. It's an extremely successful adaptation, but Spider-Verse is a story arc, which was sadly I've never read it, so I can't speak to the accuracy of it. But it is a story arc in the Marvel comics. But it was like the perfect combination of an insanely creative team and. The business side of things, I don't even know all the proper fucking terms, so that just goes to show what my opinion's worth. But like the producers and stuff who would be like, give them creative freedom on like, yeah, you can do this, you can animate this and stuff, but they were still saying we need this, we need to hit these plot points, we need this kind of relationship. We can sell toys by having all of these different Spider-Men in it, so that's good. Go nuts.
It's like that with pretty much anything though. Like you need to establish yourself in a set thing by doing things that have already been done.
Yeah.
Like using things that already exist, like singing, for example, or just general music in general. You need to almost do your own covers of stuff before you even be noticed, and then it doesn't make sense to make your own stuff.
The part
we live in this world where people are so focused on things that already exist that people are so weird to not try things that are new and fresh and interesting, but they just won't even give it the time of day because it's not what they know.
The part where it gets tricky, I'll tell you where it gets tricky, Reese, is do publishers deserve 90% of the profits?
Exactly, and
hi, sorry, I have got experience here because I do. Well, I've never tried to get anything published, okay, but like, I've lived my life writing things and learning to be a writer and looking into what it would be like to get a book published, and yeah, there's a whole conversation going on right now in the games industry of the pay cut of the cut of pay between CEOs and developers, and it's a really like fledgling thing that's happening, and I really hope it goes somewhere, because you look at Activision and you see how much Bobby Kotick makes, and you look at what the developers do to get the games selling and how much they actually earn. Apparently Blizzard employees actually don't get paid that much. Like the people who make World of Warcraft and Overwatch, and
that's one
these
of the reasons why
Blizzard
that's what I mean. Like, one of the reasons Blizzard comes under fire so hard is because of stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't too long ago where they literally axed a shit ton of jobs.
Yeah.
While also proclaiming it was one of the best years they'd had.
Exactly. And I could make a comment that might get me in trouble at work, so I'm not going to. But like, I've seen some similarities out in the world of businesses doing this kind of thing, and we're getting extremely far away from Avengers now. But my original point was that there's a balance between creativity and business sense, and I think this is one of those movies that really hit the mark. Maybe not quite as well as Spider-Verse, but it was such a fucking phenomenal success, and you can still see the business side of things of like how they would market it. For toys, you need these characters saying these things, put that in the trailer and it will make fans go, holy shit, look at that fan service, I'm paying for a ticket to see this movie.
This is the thing now, especially after we've gone all the way through and obviously finished phase 3 now. These are people that understand their audience now, and they know what they want, and so you can only assume everything that will be made from now onwards will be catered to that audience, and it will be beloved. And there is a strange coldness to that as well, which is slightly upsetting, because if one thing's good and pretty much interests everyone, then what's the point in trying? Like,
dude,
how are you going to top that kind of stuff? Which is, it's almost overwhelming.
That film you made, dude,
amount of
was
success,
so good.
Kind of thing.
That film you made was so good. Oh man, yeah, people fucking loved it. Really good, but really good creativity. How fast can you make me a sequel? No, it doesn't matter. No, you put the same characters in it. I don't really care what the plot is. Just who's gonna be in it. Okay. Can we put him in a different suit? A different? Yeah. No. To advance the character. Yeah. No, but also we could do a new toy line. That's hi, welcome to
But that's what I mean, like, everything is business, like,
Yeah.
so much decision driving from behind films like this is so business, which is why it's so impressive when something like this can come out and be as fantastic as it is.
Yeah. Oh.
Despite the horrible goblins behind it all.
Capitalism is what we have. So that was phase 1 of our podcast. Reese, do you have anything else to say about
capitalism in the middle?
Yeah, that's just the way we've been lately, isn't it? I'm not sure if you've seen my latest Halo video I put out, but that also had a random ramble about capitalism in the middle of it.
I'll watch it at some point. I'd watch it. Yeah,
I only just published it before, to be honest. I know you were watching Avengers. Reese was late on his homework. Don't tell anyone.
I did, but I said that's still good. But yeah, my final thoughts, honestly, like in terms of like the whole of phase 1 and stuff as well, it is a testament to like how well something can be done if it has enough support. This is something that was unheard of back then. Obviously, when Iron Man came out, there wasn't like this overly ambitious like idea of being like, this is going to be huge, there's going to be so much coming after it, blah blah blah. Obviously they already had the setup and the intention, but they had the setup and the dream almost of doing it, and then they realized Iron Man sold really well, and we're like, shit, we need to do an Iron Man 2.
I think it's quite telling.
Maybe we should do Captain America. Like, it was like this almost rolling effect of like,
I mean, I'd love to
thing, like, part of it is luck, like.
There is a documentary on Disney Plus about the creation of the Avengers like cinematic universe, or the
Yeah.
Marvel cinematic universe, and I should probably watch that because I am super interested to see like, did they have this entire vision at the very start, or was it the success of Iron Man that made them think, like I imagine they were probably already thinking of a sequel,
think-
but like a whole shared universe, because I don't
I
think
honestly
it's a
think
new
it's a
idea.
yes and no. I think it's a yes and no. I think it just depends on who you ask. Because the people making this, like specifically the people that are actually down there making it, I think were like, oh, we're gonna, if this takes off, like we could make so much cool stuff. Like, oh, I love comic books, and I want to really make some cool stuff out of it. You know, like the dream. And then you've got the business side, which is like, we might make a sequel if this makes enough money. And it's like, and that's the thing. That's what annoys me so much. Is creativity is so hard stifled by the fact that you have to pay for shit.
Yeah. But
Getting off topic again. Sorry.
money is the root of all problems, people.
It is.
Welcome to pseudo Marxism. Now I'm joking. I'm not even going to go into that. But no, what I was going to say is something completely different, which I've now lost. Hang on, give me 2 seconds.
Oh, there it is.
That's right. Nope, it's gone.
Trying to remember what we were
It's going to be something about the MCU
saying.
as a whole. Oh yeah, the idea of a shared universe in cinema. I think it was just an Easter egg, but I noticed when I watched the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, they're trying to figure out what to call Doctor Octopus, and they were like, Doctor Strange? No, that's taken. And that made me stop and think, wait, were they thinking of like connecting a universe? I'm not aware of any connected universe stuff in cinema that's ever happened before the MCU. There might be. I'd love to hear about it if there was. But obviously the comics are a connected universe, and I imagine that there have been times when people have been making comic book movies where they're like, couldn't this be more than just its own individual thing? Like, this character doesn't even exist in the comics outside of a universe where these other characters don't exist. In some cases, it doesn't even make sense for them to exist alone without the other characters existing. So I wonder how long this has been a dream that hadn't been realised until the MCU. And I mean, I remember playing the Spider-Man 2 game on PS2, and Fantastic Four were in it, and I was like, wait, these are part of the same universe? Like, that entire concept wasn't even in my brain, because I didn't read comics growing up. I was like, Fantastic Four, this is a weird crossover, and I was like, wait, it's not a crossover, this is just like a Marvel universe? It kind of blew my mind, to be honest. So it's really cool to see it come together in the Avengers, is my rambling point that I'm getting to, and I wonder how hard it must have been. It must have been insanely hard, and it's crazy that they're still. I think they said they've got MCU movies planned through to 2030 or something crazy like that.
I think they've got a big roadmap to do stuff with.
I think they're just going to keep trying to go on forever like they do for comics, and I think that's kind of admirable. I'm not sure if the quality is going to maintain as it has throughout the first 3 phases, because the more
the issue is
to
though
introduce-
is they've kind of gone away from a lot of comic book stuff and kind of made their own story based on things.
Well, it's like a rearrangement of a lot of story arcs. Like, for instance, I said with Thor Ragnarok, it's super interesting because it's a Thor movie, but it has a massive Hulk story arc in it. Like, when he's on that planet, I'm not sure if that is Planet Hulk or if it's something else, but you see these comic book, this comic arc of the Hulk in like gladiator looking stuff. That, to the best of my knowledge, that is an entire story arc in the comics of the Hulk lands on this alien planet and how he interacts with this alien planet stuck in Hulk form, basically. And apparently it's one of the most popular comic runs they've done. And that was in a Thor movie, as part of his journey with Ragnarok. And Hela, Helia's the WoW one. Hela, who is a whole different Thor comic storyline, which I don't think ever intersected with the Hulk stuff in the comics. So it's really cool to see the different arrangements of pre-established stuff. And I wonder if they're going to do Secret Wars, or if that's even possible in the cinematic universe.
I think it'll be a case of, if the what if stuff works, they'll do like almost spin-off movies and stuff of taking it in different directions and see what sticks.
Very true.
Because it would be really interesting to see if they do stuff like Secret Wars and that. I mean, they also need to find out, one of the great things about how stuff has been acquisitioned is stuff like X-Men and that. isn't really part of the MCU.
Yeah, they have their own
So
universe.
being able to introduce those things, then we've got the possibility of another. I mean, it's going to be another reboot, but another reboot of X-Men, under obviously under Disney. So
I mean, this is kind of a reach, but we've got that poster of the Sam Raimi. Is it the Sam Raimi Spider-Man? There was something weird about it in the upcoming movie. For
when was it Morbius?
Morbius, yeah. There was a poster.
Yeah, it was Sam Raimi Spider-Man. Yeah,
it was Sam Raimi Spider-Man, and it said Killer, with a question mark, which is weird because that's a plot point for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. But the fact that they used a Sam Raimi Spider-Man poster, it could just be an error of they just put the wrong one up because it was by an executive who did it. I don't know why an executive would be putting posters up on the set, but you know what I mean. It could just be an error, or it could be a hint at multiverse. Like
exactly, yeah.
Surely at some point they've got to go multiverse because that's. I mean, they already are. The Loki show that's not the MCU's Loki. I'm pretty sure they've already.
That's alternate timeline Loki.
That's opposite timeline Loki, who escaped during the Avengers sequence.
Yeah, it's the one. It's the one that took the Tesseract.
Yeah.
Beard.
So they What If and stuff. That is multiverse. So I wonder if they're going to go down that route in the movies.
It would be interesting if I honestly think the What If stuff, because they're all animated, aren't they? The What If stuff, if any of them super stick with people, they may just be like, we're making a film out of this one, and make it a whole thing, which would be interesting.
Yeah. Hey, do you know
Let's see Marvel Zombies!
I was about to bring that up. I was going to say, do you know which What If one I'm looking forward to the most? Marvel Zombies. So basically...
Also, Captain...
Peggy,
Peggy as Captain America.
Peggy Carter, yeah, that's going to be cool too. But I was going to say, basically, me and Reese, when I had Marvel Unlimited, I basically shared my screen with Reese, and we read through Marvel Zombies together, and that's one of the highlights of my time reading comics as a human being. That was so fun.
It's so good.
It's such a crazy comic. If you've never read it,
I just like how I just love how insane it gets. Immediately, Surfer turns up, then Galactus turns up, and it's just like.
Oh, it's so good.
Well, that's another point as well. Fantastic Four will be probably introduced at some point as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like
the new shit apparently the new one wasn't very good. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either.
That might be.
But I mean, that wouldn't work anyway because Killmonger plays. Was it Michael B. Jordan?
And
guy who played Killmonger also plays Human Torch.
And
so
guess what? The original Fantastic Four, Chris Evans plays the Human Torch, so we're fucked either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, for God's sake. I mean, you could see them maybe recasting him and pretending like it, but I've not seen them MCU really do that except for Don Cheadle. But anyway, thank you for watching. Guess which movie we're doing next week, guys. It's certainly something we didn't just decide last minute before booting up this podcast. But it is something that's been on my mind for a few weeks and that I'm very excited that we are doing. Na 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 na. We're doing Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is currently available on Netflix if you have that. I thought it was on Amazon Prime, weirdly, but it's not. It's on Netflix. I just accidentally swapped to Netflix Children, so I've got to wait for that to load before I can load it back. Don't think Jurassic Park's going to be on Netflix Children because it does have people being eated, but I'm digressing.
Yeah.
Next week, join us back here, and we'll be watching Jurassic Park. I last saw that film when I was about 4 or 5 years old, which now that I think about it probably was not appropriate for my age.
Can't remember when I watched it last.
There's two things I remember about Jurassic Park. I don't even know if it's 1 or 2, but here we go. And there's a third one, right? I'm not sure I've seen that one.
There's the third one as well, yep.
What I remember about Jurassic Park
last one that's got rebooted
is a guy gets eaten in a portaloo, and clever girl. I remember that.
Girl.
Also, I think it's Jurassic Park 2. I remember a shot of a dinosaur looking through a little girl's bedroom. That's all of Jurassic Park that I know. So Isn't
that like the newer one?
No, that was one of the older ones. I think Jurassic Park 2 might deal with the dinosaurs being in an inhabited area, or at least for a portion of the film. I'm not sure.
I can't remember how it goes. I know the main guy in those films. Like after the first one, he has to do, and it's like, oh, this shit again.
But either way, my bladder is screaming at me, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. thank you for watching, everyone, or listening, I should say. Probably listening.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention: my audio levels should finally be correct.
Hooray!
Because there was no echo in the last audio version, but I was a little bit quiet, so I just ramped you up and you were loud, so that they could basically turn us down whenever they want to. So this time round should be all good. I'm sorry if you listen. I'm out of ideas. I'll see you next week. Reese will also
see you next week.
And remember to stay fresh.